Good evening, wherever you are. My name is Evans Matuga. Today, I would want us to focus on a very important aspect that is affecting the whole country and the whole world at large, and that is viruses. Now, when we want to understand viruses, there are broad areas that we're going to look at. But before we do that, I would want us to understand that in biology deals with living organisms. And there are different branches of biology which include parasitology, which includes microbiology, which includes virology. So let me stick to virology. Virology is the scientific study of viruses. So those people who study viruses have a name and they are referred to as virologists. Viruses can also be studied in another branch of biology known as microbiology by microbiologists. And when they study viruses, they study amongst other parasites. So a virus can be studied also under a subspecialty known as microbiology. Alongside those ones, in cell molecular biology, we can also study the genetic relationship and genetic makeups of these viruses under cell molecular biology. So viruses can be studied in broad areas in many other aspects apart from the virology study. So having understood that aspect on how we can study these viruses, now we can define what a virus is. Let's define a virus. A virus, therefore, is a submicroscopic infectious agent that replicates when inside a living cell. I have used the term replicating. It is replicating in this way. I'll give you a very simple example that can make you understand. When you go to photocopy your ID, you will get an exact duplicate which looks the same way, and you cannot differentiate them except for this is original and the other one is a photocopy, but the information there is the same. So that is how viruses behave. They replicate, and when they replicate, therefore, they are multiplying in large numbers. That is the ability of viruses to replicate. Now, very quickly now, I want us to look at the examples of these viruses that we have. There are broad categories of viruses that we have. And those examples include the ones that you already know. You all know that there is chicken pox viruses. There is herpes viruses. There is HIV and AIDS viruses. Now, the most current one that we have, which is COVID-19, it's under the family of viruses known as coronaviridie. So, under the coronaviridie, which is the most common known as COVID-19, it has a specific name known as SARS-CoV-2. SARS means severe acute respiratory syndrome, COVID-2. The first time this coronavirus was discovered was in the 1960s. It's not the first time it's appearing. It was there sometime in the 1960s. And there are many known types of these coronaviruses, and they include beta coronavirus, they include delta coronavirus, gamma, and alpha coronavirus. But the most common known now, which is the most current SARS-CoV-2, is beta coronavirus. If you look around and how you can be able to see it in a diagram or on TV, it is crown-like spikes. Those spikes are what describes beta coronavirus, the known COVID-19. So, having understood that one, now can we understand broadly that what are the structures that how do they appear, the viruses, the common viruses that have been discovered? Those viruses that we now know, including the coronaviruses, have a particular shape, and the shape can be helical shape, or the shape can be icosahedral shape, or the shape can be spherical shape. But this sphere is quasi, so we call it quasi-spherical shape. So they can take any type or form of shape. And while looking at the structure of a virus, it is also important to note that it has three components. The first component is the genetic material that comprises of the RNA or a DNA. So a virus can only have either an RNA or a DNA. RNA is a ribonucleic acid. DNA is a deoxyribonucleic acid. So that means both of them have nucleic acid. Specifically to coronavirus, which is COVID-19, it has an RNA that is positive to sense. It has an RNA and it does not have a DNA. Component number 2 a virus has is the protein coat. That is what you call as the caspid. Component number 3 is the layer. There is the lipid layer. They are called phospholipid bilayer. And this is why you're being told to wash your hands, because it has a layer of a lipid that can easily be washed away if it's maybe if you contract it while you are touching the surfaces. So that is and how the structure looks like. Now, having understood that the virus now has 3 parts: genetic part, which is the genetic material, RNA or DNA; number 2, which is covered by a protein coat, the caspid; number 3, the outermost layer, which is the phospholipid layer. It's now important to know what and how a virus behaves when it's inside a cell. For example, if you pick a virus and the first thing it does, it incorporates itself into your cell. Once it's inside your cell, that virus has the ability to replicate, as I told you in its definition. So it multiplies and produces more genetic components of the same copy. It integrates itself into your chromosomes. And when it does behave so, then now there are 2 things which are bound to happen. Number 1, there are likelihoods of producing more cells, or number 2, there can be lysogen happening. So there's lysogeny. The lytic cycle of a cell will happen. That is, it breaks or bursts. The cell lyses, so bursts. On the part of multiplication when it's inside your cells, that explains how cancer actually occurs. For COVID-19, it has not been known how actually it occurs. But if we borrow this aspect of multiplication, I'll take you back to your respiratory system, because now this is a SARS virus, under SARS. On your respiratory system, along those alimentary canals, we have particular cells known as goblet cells whose function is to produce mucus. If I am to think scientifically, though this is not been proved, the cells that produce mucus are called goblet cells. And so if this cell enters inside your respiration or respiratory system, then it's going to cause the multiplication of goblet cells to be more. Once there are many more goblet cells, then expect more mucus to be produced. And now this is the basis of getting more fluids that blocks the system, according to my own understanding. Though this is still not scientific, because the processes are continuing. Having understood that one, do we have the origin of viruses? The answer is no or yes. It is not known where the viruses originated from, whether they were created by God or scientifically, they are then expected to must have evolved through replication of genetic materials like DNA, which formed viruses. We expect that there were some DNA structures that became viruses a long time ago on evolution. And that one, of course, is based on scientific theories that exist currently. Do we have characteristics of these viruses that we can give out? Yes, there are. One of the characteristics of a virus is that it has a life. It's a life form. It can transform to be life when inside a living cell. Number two, it is able to reproduce. So viruses reproduce, of course, and because they have a DNA strand within their structures. And finally, viruses evolve through natural selection. You all know about natural selection, how Charles Darwin explains this theory very well. Transmission. Are they transmitted? Yes, they can be transmitted through vectors, and the vectors are a number of them, include the aphids. Aphids are birds that can transmit it from a plant to another plant, and it can be from plant to plant. A virus can be transmitted from a human to human. Example is now COVID-19, and that is how transmission of viruses occur. And these viruses can be, of course, be transmitted through these vectors that we have explained, but through other factors that contribute, like coughing, sneezing, and because they carry out the particles, they have the particles that transmits, that also contains these viruses. Then we can now conclude that it's important to follow the ministerial regulations on preventing these viruses from occurring. Now that the COVID-19 is been classified as being carried by some smaller particles, of course, through your saliva droplets from one person to another. That said and done, I would now wish to tell everyone and every Kenyan that viruses are very small, but they are very dangerous. You don't need to catch it for you to know that it's very dangerous. Follow all the ministry regulations, especially on COVID-19, the one I call it as SARS-CoV-2. It is very dangerous because it can block your system. However, alongside following all the guidelines of the ministries and all those stories, I would wish to tell you that we are at advanced stages because at Chicago, the government of the United States are really working very hard to give us a vaccine for it. And I am now being informed that we have discovered Remdesivir as a vaccine that can treat COVID-19. They have already tried the monkeys, and the monkeys have shown good progress so far, and we expect that soon trials can be done on human beings, and everybody, if that becomes a drug, will be back to normal work. We hope for the best, but continue obeying the ministry rules. From my point and desk as a biology teacher, I would wish to tell you that a virus is small but very dangerous. Take care.